The late summer sun beat down on Willow Creek, Illinois, baking the asphalt of the main street and shimmering over the fields of corn that stretched to the horizon. A sense of nervous energy crackled in the air, thick and palpable. Today wasn't just another hot Friday. It was the day the new Willow Creek Dam was to be officially inaugurated. The town had been buzzing about it for months. The local newspaper had a full-page spread, hailing it as a monument to progress and a new era for the small farming community. A massive banner, bright red and impossibly optimistic, hung over the entrance to the site. Willow Creek Dam, a new era. Hundreds of people had gathered, their faces a mix of pride, curiosity, and a little bit of impatience in the sweltering heat. Kids ran through the crowd, their shouts muffled by the low hum of conversation. The new dam was a sleek, modern beast of concrete and steel, a stark contrast to the old rickety wooden dam it was replacing. It was supposed to be a symbol of the town's future, a promise of flood control and a more stable water supply for the surrounding farms. But not everyone was celebrating. Elias Thorne, a man whose face was as weathered and cracked as the dry riverbeds he knew so well, stood on the periphery. His faded denim overalls and worn-out work boots stood out against the clean shirts and Sunday dresses of the crowd. His eyes, the color of a stormy sky, weren't focused on the new dam's polished facade, but on the ground beneath it. He saw the subtle imperfections, the way the soil, a mix of ancient clay and loose silt, had been churned up and packed down. He'd been farming this land for 84 years, a lifetime of understanding the river's moods, its patience and its fury. He knew its secrets, its hidden veins of unstable ground. He had tried to warn them, the young, cocky engineers from the city, that the foundation was built on a lie, on land that would not hold. They had just laughed at him, patting his shoulder condescendingly and calling him a relic of the past. The mayor, a man named Henderson, took to a podium, his voice amplified by crackling speakers. He was a man of grand gestures and even grander promises. He spoke of prosperity, of how the dam would bring new life to Willow Creek. The crowd cheered, a wave of collective optimism washing over them. Elias, leaning heavily on his gnarled walking stick, felt a knot of dread tighten in his stomach. He shuffled forward, his old legs aching with the effort, his voice a gravelly whisper at first, then a clear, desperate shout. "You're all making a mistake. That foundation won't hold. The old river, she's got a temper you don't know." A collective hush fell over the crowd, followed by a ripple of nervous laughter. Someone shouted, "He's just bitter they didn't ask him to build it." A few teenagers jeered, their faces twisted into mocking smirks. "Go home, Grandpa. Leave it to the experts." The mayor, his face flushing with annoyance, gave Elias a tight, patronizing smile. "Thank you for your colorful input, Mr. Thorne, but our engineers have assured us everything is perfectly sound. Now, if we could continue..." Humiliated and ignored, Elias retreated to the edge of the crowd, his heart heavy with a premonition of disaster. He felt a deep, profound sadness, not for himself, but for the people who had so easily dismissed the wisdom of their own land. He watched, his knuckles white on his walking stick, as the mayor prepared to cut the ceremonial ribbon. Just then, a low rumble, a sound like a distant thunderstorm, emanated from the base of the dam. It wasn't thunder. It was the sound of strained concrete, of earth giving way. A thin line of darkness appeared, a seeping stain on the seemingly impenetrable wall of the dam, growing wider and darker by the second. The crowd's laughter died on their lips, replaced by a collective, horrified gasp, as the first fracture, a jagged scar against the perfect concrete, appeared and began to widen. The murmur of the crowd turned into a terrified roar. The once celebratory atmosphere shattered into pure, unadulterated chaos. The low rumble became a deep, bone-vibrating groan as the crack in the dam widened with a sickening crunch. The dark stain of water became a torrent, a muddy geyser erupting from the very heart of the structure. The air, moments ago filled with cheers, was now filled with screams of panic. People scrambled backward, pushing and shoving to get away from the looming steel and concrete monster that was now showing its true, fragile nature. Among the chaos, one voice cut through the noise, clear and commanding. "Everyone, listen to me. Get to the high ground, the old church hill now." It was Elias, the man they had just mocked. The old farmer they had dismissed as a crank was now their only beacon of calm in the storm. His stooped posture had straightened. His eyes, so full of sadness moments before, were now alight with a fierce, urgent focus. He pointed towards the hill where the old stone church stood, the highest point in Willow Creek. The people, their fear overriding their pride, began to follow his command, their movements clumsy and frantic. Elias didn't stop there. He was a man of action, and he knew they were running out of time. He turned to a group of men, their faces pale with shock. "You! Get to the main sluice gate. It's on the north side, near the old weir, the red lever. You have to pull it all the way down. It's the only chance we have to divert some of the flow." The men, led by a young man in a baseball cap who had been particularly cruel in his mockery, stared at him, frozen. Elias barked, "Go! Now! Every second counts!" The young man, his face a mask of shame and terror, finally snapped into action, racing off with the others in tow. He spotted a young woman, a volunteer firefighter named Sarah, standing near the podium clutching a two-way radio. She was pale, her training momentarily forgotten in the face of the overwhelming disaster. Elias rushed to her side. "You! With the radio, call for help. Tell them to warn everyone downstream. Tell them the dam is failing and to prepare for a flash flood." Sarah, galvanized by the old man's unwavering gaze, finally found her voice. She began to speak into the radio, her words trembling at first, then growing stronger as she relayed the urgent message. Ignoring the pleas of a few concerned onlookers to get to safety, Elias hobbled towards the crumbling section of the dam, his walking stick now a tool, not just a support. He pulled a thick, weathered rope from his bag, a tool he had carried for decades, for countless emergencies on his farm. "We need to tie it around that old oak tree," he shouted, pointing to a gnarled giant of a tree on the riverbank, its roots sunk deep into the earth. "And then anchor it to the main structure. It might buy us a few minutes." The young man from the crowd, the one who had mocked him, had returned. He, along with two others, looked at Elias not with scorn, but with a newfound reverence. Inspired by his courage, they followed his commands, working together to secure the rope, their hands trembling, but their resolve firm. The ground beneath their feet was now a liquid mess, the roar of the water deafening. Just as they finished, Elias saw the sluice gate team struggling. They were pulling on the massive lever with all their might, but it wouldn't budge. He yelled over the roar of the water, his voice strained but clear. "You're pulling it the wrong way. It's a hydraulic lock. You have to release the pressure first, the small lever on the side." His decades of working with similar, albeit smaller, irrigation systems had given him an instinctive understanding of the mechanisms. The team, exhausted and soaking wet, followed his instructions. With a final, agonizing groan, the gate began to move, a sliver of hope in the face of certain disaster. The flow of water, though still a raging torrent, was partially diverted. The pressure on the main dam was momentarily eased, buying them precious seconds, seconds that would ultimately save lives. The dam finally gave way with a thunderous, earth-shaking roar. The sound was so immense, so primal, that it felt as if the world itself was being torn apart. A massive wall of water, brown with mud and debris, surged downstream, but its full, devastating force had been blunted. Thanks to Elias's quick thinking and the desperate unified efforts of the community, the flash flood was a disaster, but not an annihilation. Homes were flooded, fields were ruined, But the people, the men, women and children of Willow Creek, were safe, huddled on the high ground of the church hill. They watched in silent awe as the raging torrent tore through their town, their faces streaked with mud and tears, their hearts pounding with a mixture of terror and overwhelming relief. In the aftermath, the silence was as deafening as the roar of the water had been. The sun, now low in the sky, cast long, weary shadows over the ruined town. Elias, exhausted but alive, was now surrounded not by scoffers, but by grateful faces. The young man with the baseball cap, his eyes red with a mix of fear and gratitude, approached him. "Mr. Thorne, I'm so sorry. For everything. We were all fools." Elias simply nodded, his gaze still fixed on the chaotic river. He didn't want apologies. He was just relieved to see his community safe. In the following days, Willow Creek became a scene of bustling, unified activity. Volunteers from neighboring towns, hearing the story of the old farmer's heroism, arrived in droves to help with the cleanup. The mayor, his career in tatters and his credibility shattered, resigned in disgrace. The engineers, their hubris exposed for what it was, were held accountable. The story of Elias's heroism and his rural wisdom was picked up by local news, then regional, and finally national. He became a local hero, a symbol of resilience, and a testament to the value of listening to those with a deep, lived-in knowledge of their world. But Elias, ever the humble farmer, didn't want the fame. He simply went back to his farm, working the land he loved, quietly rebuilding what the flood had damaged. However, things had changed in a way that mattered far more than any news report. People now came to him, not to mock, but to ask for advice. The young men who had helped him at the dam site, now humbled by their experience, returned to help him with his crops, listening intently as he explained the best way to mend a fence or the secrets of the shifting soil. Sarah, the young firefighter, now a close friend, often stopped by for a cup of coffee on his porch, sharing stories of the day and marveling at the strength of a community rebuilt on a new foundation: respect and trust. The final scene shows Elias sitting on his porch, watching the sun set over his fields. The river, now a gentle stream again, flows peacefully in the distance, a scar on the land, but a testament to a lesson learned. A group of young people, led by the same young man who had once mocked him, are working together to rebuild a small bridge that was washed away. They are not just rebuilding a bridge, they are rebuilding their community. Their laughter and teamwork a powerful antidote to the tragedy they had faced. Elias smiles, a genuine, peaceful smile, a silent acknowledgement that the dam was gone, but something far more valuable had been built in its place. A stronger, more respectful community, forged in the face of disaster and saved by the quiet wisdom of a man they had almost lost.